Now, there are times like fantasy, you referenced this 28 days. That's an interesting example because we released a new, in some cases, pretty significant feature for fantasy every day of August. The 28 is a bit of a funny number, but it was our 28th anniversary of fantasy. The company's 30 years old. And in marketing and fun, hey, let's do a new feature that we roll out to fantasy every day of August. That's only achievable, though, because you've spent time leading up to it. So it's not 365 days of releases yet. Maybe that's achievable. Maybe that's idiotic. But there is a gap there. And as we fill that, how do you make progress in the sports app? How do you make progress with content and partnerships? The phrase I use a lot is get wins on the board, which is less about demonstrating externally, but more internally of momentum and the speed. And if you do that, then I think that also demonstrates to users that there's movement and there's change and that they have a voice here. And we do read feedback. A lot of the ideas in the 28 days is from user feedback over the last year. And a lot of it was totally unexpected. And I think there's a good balance there.
For you guys, how do you measure success? I mean, obviously, if you're launching so many features, what's the causality in terms of how do you know what's working and what's not when it's so rapid in terms of iteration?
That's a really good question. Another poor answer. Yeah. I think it's easier to tell what's not working.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
You can generally tell when something is not working. You can tell when things are beginning to resonate, but maybe they haven't reached meaningful scale. And then it's tinkering with what happens when we put more eyeballs or juice or we shift pixels. But it's always important, no matter where you are, to appreciate that you have a core use and user base, and disrupting it with something will always drive results. Whether you are incremental or beneficial or changing behavior, that's where you need to figure it out. But there's lots of ways to determine success. Is this working from a revenue standpoint? Is it working from engagement standpoint? Is this working from a brand standpoint, from an external PR or whatever that might be? There are missions that we have, which are very soft, and they're around, our mission across all the products is deliver smart sports content, make you a smarter sports fan. Smart is a core part of our lingo every day. That's soft. How you define, determine, weigh against that is challenging. But the other part is we're going to have misses all the time. Everyone does. And you need to know when to juice something a little more to see if there's something there, or you keep investing or committing, or do you just move on to the next thing? We have examples of those.
I mean, the good thing is actually you guys have leaned into the power of community a lot, right? Like with the new sports app that launched last year and now unifying that across fantasy products as well. So the feedback is instant. You just have to go into one of the chat rooms and the audience is going to tell you whether they like something or not. There's no filter there to a certain extent. So, that power of community, to me, we've always leaned into the power of community, but not every brand is daring enough to give into it, right? Like we see social networks, and I know you ran social in other platforms, so it was always content on someone else's properties, but owning that community, owning that conversation, and letting the community say whatever they want, good or bad, within limit, obviously with certain guardrails, is such a powerful thing. Is that now a concerted strategy for you guys going forward? Has that, like, the leaning into the community experience is something that has worked well for you guys?
Well, I think it's a great example of, this is exactly what you're describing, which is you put something out, you see that it's beginning to work. It's not perfect for a bunch of reasons, but there's enough there to say this is important. By the way, it's always been important. What is fantasy? Fantasy is, by definition, 10 to 12 friends playing, conversing, whether the conversation happens on iMessage or phone call or video or in our chat, it is sustained engagement. How do we do that for a game page? How do we do that for private, et cetera? And then we keep saying this is interesting, and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we're progressing it, and it's available in more places. And that's not different than also the way we think about even some of our gameplay. So we launched a game around Christmas last year called Daily Draw, which is a new way to play a daily game as opposed to playing season-long fantasy. We now have a game that will outcomes based on what you open every morning in a pack of cards, Could be a WNBA game. Could be an MLS game. Right. It could be last night. What tonight is Dodgers Phillies. Last night was Monday Night Football, but it's something different. It's working.
Yeah.
But then once you start to surround it, 6 months
surprise,
later with the fantasy app, it's 4x in traffic. And so it's constant iteration because you can't move fast if you need to deliver perfection every time.